I have a really fun memory from when I was about 10 years old and my family was on a family holiday on K'gari, Fraser Island, which is in Butchulla country. And I got to go on a little guided tour with a ranger, and they showed us all of the animal tracks from the wild animals that lived on Fraser Island, but they also took us on a bush tucker tour. And it was really fun to just kind of see these wild native Australian plants that were growing and that were edible. Obviously, there were some that I couldn't try, like pandanus, but there was also others like pig face, which I could try. And I thought that was really cool because my parents and my grandparents had pig face growing in their garden. It was a really common plant that I'd seen. And I couldn't believe that this thing that I'd always thought was a nice ornamental plant was actually edible. And as I've been learning more about gardening and about native species to plant and to attract pollinators and whatnot, and just learning about which species have adapted to our fairly unique climate and environmental conditions here in Australia, I really want to plant more natives. So I am going to create a bit of a native garden because I am mainly informed by the principles of permaculture. I not only want to have native flowers to attract pollinators and ornamentals and things that kind of serve a purpose and look really nice, but I also want edibles. So I have got some seedlings and plants that I have had for a couple of months now, and they're growing really well. And I'm also going to hopefully germinate some more seeds for some different things. So I've got this. It is a native seed box from a company here in Australia. It's a survival seeds tin, but it has edible and medicinal native seeds. So this is going to be really cool because a lot of these native Australian plants either need to be heat treated with hot water or smoke treated with smoke granules, because those are the conditions that they're used to growing in here in Australia. And I've also got one of these seed bombs. This is from the same company, Native Seed Box. They have a Australian bush tucker seed bomb, which has a couple of different seeds to this one. So I'm going to give both of these a go. It'll be really interesting to see how I go with the hot water treatment and the smoke treatment. And then I'm just going to kind of sort out where I want my native bush tucker garden to be in my house. So I am planning on doing it in the front yard because that just kind of makes the most sense in terms of permaculture zones. That front yard is close enough to a hose, but it's more of a permaculture zone 2 where I don't need to go and tend to it every day. Whereas all of my kind of zone 1 gardens are in the backyard and kind of closer to my back door. So the other cool thing about the front yard is I have a native beehive out there, which is actually really cool. And I will show you guys because I didn't even realize that I had a native bee colony living in my front yard until quite recently. So right in the midst of this pretty unassuming tree in the front yard, at the bottom here is a nice little colony of native stingless bees. They kind of look like flies, but they are native bees. So the bees that are native to Australia that specifically live in colonies in hives like this are the native stingless bees, and they're the only ones that actually produce honey, unlike the other native Australian bees that are solitary and kind of nest on their own. So these guys are really, really great pollinators. They love a lot of fruit and veg crops as well as obviously native plants, and they typically construct their hives in hollow logs or tree cavities, hence why they've kind of made themselves at home here in this old tree. So I just noticed all of these little mealybugs in the garden where I'm planning on putting all my natives, so I'm going to give them a little bit of a spray. Hopefully that gets rid of them. Hey, you're so cute. So these are my native seedlings. I got most of them online, but there were a couple that I picked up from Bunnings, and they seem to be doing really well in these little pots. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to swap them out for the plants that I had in pots in the garden bed that I'm turning into my native garden. So there's just a bunch of broms really that I'm going to move to somewhere else because broms can pretty much tolerate any environment. So I'll put my natives in those pots and hopefully they will grow nice and big. So this is what the garden bed looks like. That brom is planted in the ground, so I'm just going to let that one stay there anyway. And these trees that have the mealy bugs, I'm also going to leave them for now because they'll provide shade for some of the shade-loving natives that I've got. I might end up getting rid of those eventually. I probably will, but for now they can stay. I want to plant some things in the actual ground, but I'm going to keep my natives in these pots for now, and then what I'll do is once they're stronger I'll propagate them and propagate some into the garden. I also have these which I'm going to plant. These are not edibles unlike the others, so I've got some Banksia, which is my absolute favourite, and Melaleuca. So the Melaleuca grows to 7 metres, the Banksia 4, and this other Melaleuca grows to about 1 metre tall. And I'm going to pop these in front of the house. I think they will grow nice and big and provide a little bit of shade and cool us down a little bit. And I just think they'll look nice since I don't really know what's happening with this garden bed. But they'll attract the native pollinators and they'll stay here long after I'm gone. Rock. Should we give everyone a tour of our favourite plants? So this is Old Man Saltbush, and this is one of my favourites. The leaves are so salty. Tastes so good. This one is Ruby Saltbush, and I don't have any red berries, but there's some yellow ones. And they're like sweet and quite juicy. This one is sea celery, which can be picked and eaten just like regular celery. Tastes like regular celery, just salty. So this is probably another one of my favorites. This is strawberry gum, and if you pick off the leaves and just give them a rub, oh my god, it smells so good. This literally smells like strawberry bubblegum, and the leaves can basically be used to flavour desserts or things like tea, so this is definitely a fave. Let's go plant some seeds, Rocco. So I'm starting with the seeds that need to be hot water treated. So I've got some ruby saltbush, a wild jack bean, and some camel bush. And I'm just gonna pick as many seeds as I want to try and germinate, and then popping them into this little biodegradable water treatment bag. Kind of just looks like a tea bag. And I boiled the kettle, and then I let the water cool to about 80 degrees, and then what I'll do is I'll pop these in, and then once the water cools down to about room temperature, they'll be good to sow. For the seeds that need a smoke treatment, I'm just sprinkling some smoke granules on the top of the soil. Ideally, you want to use a native potting mix because native plants prefer soils that are low in phosphorus, I believe. So if you're buying a fertilizer or a potting mix, you want to get one that is designed specifically for Australian native plants.